cancelled. British right-wing commentator Katie Hopkins has her visa revoked after boasting about breaching hotel quarantine rules.
We will be getting her out of the country as soon as we can possibly arrange that. So I'm hopeful that that it will happen imminently.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And it's goodbye and good riddance to Katie Hopkins, the toxic British commentator who's been kicked out of the country after flouting hotel quarantine measures in Sydney and bragging about it on social media.
The police officer who checked me in told me when they knock on my door, I have to wait 30 seconds till I can open the door. So I've been lying in wait round the corner in my bathroom. As someone knocks on the door, I'm trying to get to the door and spring it open and frighten the out of them and do it naked with no face mask.
Hopkins loves to create controversy. Outrage is her business model. And on the weekend, she was busy stirring up publicity as she posted multiple Instagram videos to her 263,000 followers.
I have always called lockdown the greatest hoax in human history.
But who on earth invited her here in the first place? Well, Hopkins was in Australia on a special visa to appear on Seven's Big Brother VIP. But with more than 11 million Australians in lockdown and tens of thousands unable to get back home, the insult of Hopkins ridiculing lockdown and quarantine provoked a bigger backlash than she had bargained for.
So they've got no problem sending home someone who wants to flout our laws. They want to flout our laws, then you pack your bongo and get out of the country.
And that is what is now happening after Seven and production company Indepth, which makes Big Brother, dumped Hopkins and cut her loose.
In a statement, the Seven Network confirmed Katie Hopkins is not a part of Big Brother VIP, adding, "We strongly condemn her irresponsible and reckless comments in hotel quarantine."
But being reckless and irresponsible is no doubt why they hired her in the first place. Hopkins is, after all, notoriously racist. And Shine and Seven would have been well aware of her hateful views. As Hopkins said in a promo for 60 Minutes 2 years ago,
I'm known as the biggest bitch in Britain.
And as Media Watch viewers would know, she has a long history of hateful comments about migrants, asylum seekers and minorities. In 2017, after the Manchester bombing, she tweeted, "We need a final solution." She was immediately sacked from her talk show on LBC Radio, where colleagues cheered the news of her departure. Soon after that, she was also dropped as a columnist by the Mail Online. But Hopkins had been dialing up the outrage for years before that. As a columnist on The Sun in 2015, she described African refugees as cockroaches and suggested using gunships to stop migrant boats crossing to Europe. That same year, she advised then Labour leader Ed Miliband, whose parents fled Nazi Germany, to stick his wife's head in the oven and turn on the gas. And in 2017, she tweeted,
"Dear black people, if your lives matter, why do you stab and shoot each other so much?"
3 years later, she was also kicked off Twitter for hateful conduct. But none of that deterred Seven and Endemol Shine from signing her up in a cynical bid for ratings. They really should be ashamed of themselves. And remember, this is the network that last week insisted it never meant to be racist. But now, back to COVID reality and a stark reminder of what it's like to have the Delta strain.
Struggling to breathe inside St Vincent's intensive care unit. A man identified only as John, the human face of this crisis, 53 years old and not alone, among 71 COVID patients now in Sydney's hospitals.
With the virus still spreading in New South Wales and millions in lockdown, St Vincent's Hospital allowed one photographer into its ICU to drive home the message that COVID is serious and potentially fatal. And as 9 News reported, the stark images were in sharp contrast to the federal government's own attempt to shock the community.
Earlier this week, the federal government released this ad campaign using an actress with an aim to shock. The reality hits home harder. Real people in a real fight for their lives.
9 also ran images from intensive care on the front pages of The Age and Sydney Morning Herald. And with Sydney's outbreak gripping the city's southwest, the media was also highlighting this dramatic message in Arabic from a 47-year-old patient.
بس أكيد لو كنت هلا أنا أخذ الفاكسين يمكن ما كنت هون.
A cautionary tale from the COVID ward. Khalid Al-Masri is a father of 4 aged in his 40s. pondering how this could have been prevented.
As we all know, the answer is vaccination. And last Tuesday, Sydney's Daily Telegraph and Melbourne's Herald Sun were urging their readers to get the jab with this front-page campaign.
A call to arms! No more promises. It's time to get the jab done.
Both papers called it a war against a deadly, invisible enemy and said there could be no victory unless we get serious and on the same page. And in Brisbane's Courier Mail, readers were served up a similar plea for action.
Our call to arms. All Aussies must get the jab, and the government must secure more doses.
But the community vibe to get on the same page was not being shared by three of Australia's conservative warriors, with Ray Hadley, Alan Jones and Andrew Bolt going hammer and tongs at each other across the airwaves in a COVID row that raged for days.
Right-wing media war over COVID lockdown escalates as Ray Hadley calls out ridiculous Alan Jones.
Yes, it was colourful stuff, with Sky's Andrew Bolt branding 2GB's Ray Hadley a weak and ignorant man who panders to an ugly pack. But the real fight was between the two Sydney shock jocks, and it was Hadley who threw the first punch at his former colleague and rival, Alan Jones.
Because I've had a gut full of people sending me emails saying, oh, you got to listen to Alan, Alan's got it all right. I worked with Alan for over 30 years. I was never always right, and I'll give you a guarantee about Alan. He was never always right either. And on this one, he's dead wrong. Dead wrong.
And there was plenty more, because in Hadley's 3-hour program, he kept coming back to it.
I think he's doing himself, Sky News and the Australian public at the moment a great disservice. His disciple and lapdog, Andrew Bolt, will no doubt disagree. But, Andrew, I could care less what you think.
So, what had Ray and his listeners so fired up? It was another Alan Jones rant on Sky the night before about Sydney's COVID lockdown and Australia's handling of the pandemic, in which he roared,
"This bids to be the greatest public administration scandal this state has faced."
After which his regular guest Craig Kelly MP chimed in.
It is the most greatest policy disaster I think this country has ever had.
And there was more where that came from too, including a double act on Sky 1 week earlier that was almost exactly the same. So, why are Jones and Kelly so sure our governments have got it wrong? Because these two self-appointed experts have looked at England's official COVID data and decided the Delta strain is not really dangerous.
See the right-hand column for Delta? 0.2% case fatality. 0.2% fatalities put the Delta strain on a par with the average flu season. Craig, come in here, Craig Kelly. If Berejiklian and Morrison know this, they'd be condemned for not telling us. If our bureaucrats don't know it, they should be sacked. If they know it but are not informing Berejiklian and Morrison, they should be sacked. But there it is, isn't it, in black and white. The case fatality rate is 10 times lower for Delta than for the original strain.
Alan, it's at least 10 times lower. It could be up to 20 times lower.
So, are they right that Delta is a pussycat? Well, no. And the claim's already been shot down by America's PolitiFact and others, who dubbed it mostly false. To be sure, England's death rate from Delta is lower than from previous strains, but that's almost entirely because so many people there have now been vaccinated, which of course is not true of Australia. Almost 90% of UK adults have now received at least one jab, while 2/3 have been fully vaccinated. And according to the UK government, having 2 COVID jabs could effectively give you 90 to 100% protection against severe disease. The vaccination programme there has also prevented more than 30,000 deaths. But do Jones and Kelly accept that? Well, no. In fact, they claim, remarkably, that you're far more likely to die from COVID if you get the jab than if you don't. And that official UK data proves that too.
The death there on that table, this is official table, 8 times higher than for the unvaccinated. Craig Kelly.
Alan, what we've heard out of people in the UK, and so much every time I turn the media on, saying, look, this lower rate of case fatalities in the UK is because they've all been vaccinated. But, Alan, that data blows that out of the water. What that shows is that in the UK, those that haven't been vaccinated actually have a lower case fatality rate than those that have. And not just by a little bit, by a factor of 7 or 8.
That is extraordinary. But is it right? Answer, no again, because it's grossly misleading. And it has also been debunked at least half a dozen times by the BBC.
COVID. Misleading stat claims more vaccinated people die.
By this Reuters fact check.
England's COVID-19 death statistics do not suggest vaccines aren't working.
And by UK fact checkers Full Fact.
Vaccinated people sometimes die of COVID-19, but very rarely.
So where did the crazy theory come from? Seems it first surfaced last month in a notorious UK blog called The Daily Exposé, quote, set up due to a lack of alternatives to the lying mainstream media, which cited an earlier version of the report used by Jones and Kelly to claim
alleged COVID-19 deaths are significantly higher in people who have had at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, with the highest number of deaths occurring in people who are supposed to be fully vaccinated.
Note their use of the word alleged. They don't trust anybody. The Daily Exposé claim was then widely shared on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by anti-vax groups and others, which is perhaps where Jones and Kelly got it from. And if it does sound crazy, that is because it is. So let's take a look at that table in the Public Health England report and figure out how Jones and Kelly read it so wrong. And here comes the maths. The table shows that 257 people in England died of the Delta strain between February and June this year, of which 92 were unvaccinated and 163 had received one or more vaccine doses. So, Jones is right. But no, or not if he's talking about the risk of death, because roughly 10 times as many people in England have been vaccinated as have not, which means 10 times as many of them, or 920, should have died if their risk was the same, and 9,200 if their risk was 10 times as great. Note the table also reveals that almost all those unvaccinated adults contracting COVID were under 50. And as Alan Jones and Andrew Bolt keep telling us, and this graph of UK deaths shows, under 50s hardly ever die of this disease. So, to sum it up, both of Jones and Kelly's claims that Delta's not dangerous and vaccines won't help you are wrong and ridiculous. It is a potential killer and vaccinations are saving lives, which means Ray Hadley was right.
Craig Kelly said, you're more likely to die if you were vaccinated. Now, Mr Kelly is basically off mainstream media these days because the lunacy of such comments are almost breathtaking.
Breathtaking indeed, as is the crazy overconfidence of a sign-off like this.
This has to stop. Gladys has got to clean them out and get people in there that actually understand the data. Because these people running the show are completely incompetent.
Good on you, Craig Kelly. Outstanding. And we'll keep talking about it. You'll hear the truth here. This is not Alan Jones or Craig Kelly. There are the facts.
It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. So why does Sky boss Paul Whittaker, who's a good mate of Lachlan Murdoch, let this dangerous rubbish go to air? We asked him that question. He didn't reply. However, Sky Today published a lengthy correction online admitting it was wrong and removed the broadcast from all their platforms. And finally, to Albo, who's been beating the Sydney and Melbourne lockdowns by flying around Queensland on the campaign trail.
He's been up and down and all around Queensland, the key battlefield at the next election. And he's had a simple message, which he delivered again today.
This lockdown is Scott Morrison's lockdown.
Albo's week-long jaunt to the Sunshine State was followed almost every step of the way by his social media team, with his appearances stage-managed for local media to win him some much-needed friendly airtime.
While he was reluctant to put on a snorkel, Anthony Albanese today continued his Queensland tour in Cairns, pointing the finger at the Prime Minister over a bungled vaccine rollout.
And giving him a popularity boost were fans in the local media who fawned over the Labor leader's visit.
As a Labor girl myself, it's pretty exciting to have you in here. It's great to have you up here in our community because we do quite often miss out on visits.
But there was one thing missing from all the coverage and from Albo's social media feed, and that was pics of his trip to the Isaac Plains coal mine in the marginal seat of Capricornia, which was his first visit to a coal mine since becoming leader in 2019. At least it was missing until the Courier Mail got wind of the news and ran it on the front page, with more inside.
Snap happy, Albo, in minor omission.
Visit gets the cold shoulder in online travellog.
Which revealed
the long overdue visit was conducted in secret. There were no photos posted of the mine visit as of Monday evening, and media were not informed of it until after he had left.
Now, as far as we can tell, no pictures of the coal mine visit have surfaced in any media, and journalists say they were not alerted in advance. But when asked about it, Albo was forced to fess up.
Can you talk us through your mine visit, I guess why it wasn't more public? Were you concerned about the frank reaction from the miners?
Yesterday I was at Isaac Plains and I want to thank Stanmore Coal for their hospitality.
After which his colleague, Tanya Plibersek, tried her best to laugh it off.
You know, Scott, I have never heard anybody complain that a politician isn't posting enough photos of themselves on social media. It's no secret. He went there, he went with our candidate, he went to the Miners' Museum, went to politics in the pub. I don't think it was a secret trip.
So why was Albo so keen to keep his first visit to a coal mine in 700 days under wraps? Sky's Kieran Gilbert was incredulous.
The Courier Mail reports Anthony Albanese paid a secret visit to a Queensland coal mine, informing the media after he left. I would have thought he'd want to talk up the effort to win back blue-collar voters.
And no doubt he does, in Queensland, and especially in Moranbah, where Isaac Plains is located. But Albo also has his inner city base down south to think of. And as 4BC's Brekkie host Neil Breen explained, that conflict of interests has Labor walking a tightrope.
They were annihilated in Queensland in the last federal election, and without the support of the mining community, they'll get annihilated again. But if they go too heavy and support the mining community in places like Moranbah, then the inner city touchy-feely lefties won't like it because they just want green cars and green energy and no coal mines. And this is a huge problem for Labor.
And with an election due by May next year, it's a problem the party and its leader will need to solve pretty fast. As to how they'll do it, your guess is as good as mine. That's all from us tonight. There's plenty more on our website where you can read the Sky News statement about Alan Jones and Craig Kelly. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday online. But for now, till next week, goodbye.